Look at the loser I was going to marry, my ex mocked in front of her friends. But at that moment, her husband showed up and said, "Boss, I didn't know you were here. How can I help you?" I just said, "Tell your wife who I am." Since then, she hasn't stopped calling me. 10 years ago, I was a waiter at a small downtown restaurant. My name is Diego. I was 22, and I worked long shifts to pay for a tiny apartment. My life was simple, but I had big dreams. And I had Juliana, my high school sweetheart. I thought she was my world. Juliana was the kind of person everyone noticed. Beautiful, with a smile that captivated anyone. But she had a side only I saw. She wanted a life of luxury. Huge houses, trips, designer clothes. With my waiter's salary, I couldn't give her any of that. At first, she didn't seem to care. We laughed, spent nights talking about everything. But over time, she changed. Her words turned harsh. One night in my apartment, she looked at me with contempt and said, "Diego, you're never going to be anybody. My friends' boyfriends give them everything, and you give me nothing." Those words crushed me. I tried to explain that I want to get ahead, that I had plans, but she wouldn't listen. "I'm not going to wait years for a decent life," she said. That night, she grabbed her things and left without looking back, leaving me alone with her words echoing. "You're never going to be anybody." The days that followed were hell. I felt humiliated, lost. Every night after closing the restaurant, I'd come home, sit on the couch, and stare at the wall, replaying her words. But in the midst of that pain, there was someone who didn't let me fall. Sarah, Juliana's cousin. Sarah was different. She didn't have Juliana's flashy charm, but she was kind, warm, the kind of person who makes you feel like you're worth something. She'd always been there as a friend, but I felt something more for her. I never told her. After what happened with Juliana, the fear of rejection paralyzed me. If Juliana, who knew me so well, thought I was worthless, how could Sarah think any different? One afternoon, I was sitting in a park, staring at the ground, when Sarah approached. "Diego, don't let this drag you down," she said. Her eyes held concern, but also strength. "You're so much more than what she says. You have to prove to yourself who you are." Those words sparked something in me. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could keep going. I decided I wouldn't be the loser Juliana thought I was. I enrolled in night courses for business administration while still working as a waiter. It was exhausting. I'd get home at 2 a.m., study until 5, sleep a couple of hours, and go back to the restaurant. But Sarah was there, sending me encouraging messages, bringing me coffee when she knew I hadn't slept. I never told her how I felt, but her support kept me going. Over time, my life started to change. I finished the courses and got a job as an assistant in a logistics company. It wasn't much, but it was a step. There, I learned everything I could, how businesses worked, how to manage teams, how to take risks. At night, while everyone slept, I read business books, studied strategies, and planned. I wanted to be someone not for Juliana, but for myself, and deep down, because I want to feel worthy of someone like Sarah. 5 years later, my life was different. With savings, a loan, and a lot of determination, I opened my first business, a distribution company. It wasn't easy. There were months when I didn't know if I could pay the bills, but I made it. The company grew, and I later opened 2 more, one in technology and another in consulting. By 30, I owned a small empire. I had a decent house, a good car, and most importantly, the satisfaction of having done it all on my own. But not everything was resolved. Sarah remained my friend, but I never dared tell her how I felt. The fear of ruining our friendship or her seeing me as not enough held me back. Plus, I learned she was engaged. Her wedding was approaching, and she invited me. It hurt to think of her marrying someone else, but I couldn't miss it. I wanted to be there for her, even if just as a friend. The wedding day came quickly. I put on a suit, took a deep breath, and went to the venue, an elegant place filled with flowers and lights. Sarah looked radiant, moving among the guests, smiling as always. My heart ached, but I tried to focus on being a good friend. I was at the bar, sipping a drink, when a voice froze me. "Look, girls, there's the loser I was going to marry," Juliana said. I turned, and there she was, surrounded by her friends, holding a glass, mocking me. "What are you doing here, Diego?" "Serving tables." Her friends laughed, and I felt rage rising in my chest. 10 years later, and she was still the same. I wanted to respond, to tell her everything I'd achieved, but someone spoke before I could. "Boss, I didn't know you were here. How can I help you?" It was Carlos, one of my employees, a good, hard-working guy who managed one of my branches. But what he said next changed everything. He looked at Juliana, confused, and said, "Honey, I didn't know you knew the boss." Juliana's face fell. Her friends stopped laughing. The silence was heavy. I looked at Carlos, then at Juliana, and smiled. "Tell your wife who I am," I said calmly but firmly. Carlos, still confused, said, "Mr. Diego is the owner of the company I work for. He's my boss." Juliana went pale. Her friends looked at each other, uncomfortable, unsure what to say. I didn't say anything else. I turned and walked away, leaving Juliana with her humiliation. As I walked, I felt something I didn't expect. Relief. For the first time in years, I felt like I closed that door. But another, much more important one was about to open. After leaving Juliana humiliated at the wedding, I walked through the venue with a feeling I couldn't describe. It was like a weight had been lifted. But I knew this wouldn't end there. Juliana wasn't the type to give up, and I knew her too well. I joined a group of guests near the dance floor, trying to blend into party. Sarah was radiant, moving among the people, smiling as always. Seeing her like that reminded me why I admired her so much. But it also hurt to think about what I'd never dared try. I shook my head and focused on the moment. I was there for her, not my past. I was at the bar, taking a sip, when I saw Juliana again. She was with her friends, but her face wasn't the same. The mockery was gone, replaced by a mix of anger and nerves. For a second, our eyes met, and I knew she wouldn't let things slide. I decided to ignore her and stepped out to the venue's garden to get some air. The place was quiet, with soft lights and the distant sound of music. I sat on a bench, trying to sort my thoughts. Sarah found me there minutes later. "You escape, huh?" she said, sitting beside me with a smile. "I don't blame you. These parties can be a lot." I laughed a little, grateful for her presence. "Just needed a breather," I replied. She nodded, and we talked for a moment about the wedding. I noticed she seemed a bit off, but before I could ask, someone called her back to the party. "See you inside," she said, and left, leaving me alone. The night went on, but I couldn't shake Juliana from my mind. I knew something was coming, and I wasn't wrong. A few days later, my phone started ringing. It was her. I didn't answer, but she left a message. "Diego, I need to talk to you. It's not what you think. Please." I ignored it, but the messages kept coming. "I know I hurt you, but I've changed. Give me a chance." It was almost comical. Changed? The only thing that had changed was that she now knew I had money. A week later, Juliana took it to the next level. She showed up at my office without warning, dressed like she was going to a photo shoot, with a smile that didn't fool anyone. My assistant, Laura, tried to stop her, but Juliana dodged her and walked into my office. "Diego, just give me a minute," she said, closing the door behind her. I rolled my eyes. "I don't have time for this, Juliana. Leave." But she didn't move. She sat across from my desk, crossing her legs calmly. "I'm not leaving until we make peace," she said in her sugary tone. "I know I hurt you, but I was young, foolish. Now I see what you're worth." I laughed, but not out of amusement. "What I'm worth." I repeated, "You don't care who I am, Juliana. You care about what I have, and I'm not falling for your games." Her smile faltered, but she didn't give up. "It's not that, Diego. I really regret it. We can at least be friends." I didn't believe a word. I made her leave, but as she walked out, she said something that stuck with me. "You can't always ignore me, Diego. I promise you that." And she was right, because Juliana didn't stop. She started showing up everywhere. One night, I was at a business event, talking to some partners, when I saw her in the crowd. She approached with a glass of wine, acting like we were old friends. "Diego, "What a surprise to see you here," she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. My partners looked at her, confused, and I felt rage rising. "Juliana, I'm not doing this," I said curtly, but she smiled and stepped closer, putting a hand on my arm. "I just want to talk. Don't be like that." I gently but firmly pushed her away and left with my partners, leaving her there. I heard murmurs behind me and knew she'd made a scene on purpose. The worst came days later. Juliana managed to get an invitation to a charity gala, where I was one of the sponsors. When I went on stage to give a short speech, I saw her in the front row, staring at me with a smile that gave me chills. Afterward, while talking to other guests, she planted herself in front of me. "Diego, I didn't know you were so important," she said, her voice sweet but loaded with intent. People around us looked, and I felt she was trying to put me in an awkward spot. "Juliana, stop," I said, lowering my voice. "I don't know what you're after, but you're not getting it." She laughed like it was a joke. "I just want to be close to you, Diego. Is that so bad?" Before I could respond, one of my partners, Roberto, approached. "Everything okay, Diego?" he asked, eyeing Juliana suspiciously. I took the chance to leave, but not before noticing the spark of anger in her eyes. Juliana was playing dirty, and I was getting tired. Meanwhile, my friendship with Sarah stayed strong. We'd meet occasionally for coffee or talk on the phone. One afternoon, while walking downtown, she told me Juliana had contacted her. "She asked me to talk to you," Sarah said, laughing. "Said she wants to make things right. I told her to stay out of your life." I shook my head, incredulous. "She doesn't give up, does she?" Sarah looked at me seriously for a moment. "Be careful, Diego. Juliana's not the type to quit." I nodded, knowing she was right. And it didn't take long for Juliana to prove it. One morning, I got an email from a potential client requesting an urgent meeting. Something felt off, but I agreed. When I arrived at the restaurant, there was Juliana, alone at the table with a folder full of papers. "Diego, thanks for coming," she said, as if it were a business meeting. I stayed standing, not sitting. "What is this, Juliana?" I asked, holding back my anger. She opened the folder, showing fake charts and numbers. "I want to work with you," she said. "I have an idea for a project, and I know we can do it together." It was a blatant lie. I didn't even look at the papers. "I'm not interested," I said, and turned to leave, but she stood and grabbed my arm. "Diego, please," she said, her voice trembling. "I have no one else. Carlos and I are falling apart. My friends turned their backs on me. You're all I have left." For a second, I almost felt pity, but I remembered who she was. "I'm not your savior, Juliana," I said, "and I'm not your ticket to an easy life. Leave me alone." I pulled away and walked out, ignoring her gaze. But Juliana didn't give up. She started sending gifts to my office, a bottle of wine, an apology card, even an expensive watch I returned unopened. Then she got bolder. One night, while I was dining with a client, I got a call from an unknown number. It was her, crying. "Diego, I'm in trouble," she said. "Someone's following me. I don't know what to do." She sounded desperate, but something didn't add up. I told her to call the police and hung up. Minutes later, she texted, "I just wanted to see you. Sorry." Another trick, and I was fed up. The final straw was when she showed up at my house. It was a Saturday night, and I was watching a movie, trying to relax. The doorbell rang, and when I opened it, there she was, red-eyed, holding a bottle of liquor. "Diego, I can't take it anymore," she said, swaying. "I lost everything because of you." Rage surged in my chest. "Because of me?" I repeated. "You lost everything because you never valued anything. Don't drag me into your problems." I tried to close the door, but she pushed it. "Don't leave me like this," she pleaded. I had to be firm. "Juliana, if you don't leave, I'm calling the police." That stopped her. She looked at me with hatred but left, muttering something I couldn't hear. After that, I talked to Carlos. He was devastated. He told me his marriage to Juliana was hanging by a thread, and she wouldn't stop talking about me. "I don't know what to do, Diego," he said. "She's losing it." I told him it wasn't my responsibility, but that I felt for him. Juliana was out of control, and I knew this wasn't over. My friendship with Sarah kept me sane. One night, over coffee, she gave me advice. "Ignore her, Diego," she said. "The more attention you give her, the more she'll keep going. Don't let her drag you down." She was right, but it wasn't that easy. Juliana was everywhere, and my patience was wearing thin. It didn't take long for things to escalate. One morning, I got a call from Roberto, one of my partners. "Diego, we have a problem," he said, his voice tense. "Someone's spreading rumors about the company. They're saying we're bankrupt, that you've been embezzling funds. Clients are nervous." My stomach sank. I knew exactly who was behind it. "Give me everything you can on those rumors," I said. "Find out where they're coming from." That afternoon, Roberto sent me a report. The rumors started on a local business forum from an anonymous account, but there were clues, the language, the dates, even a vague mention of a former waiter who thinks he's a tycoon. It was Juliana, no doubt. She was trying to hit me where it hurt most, my reputation. I sat in my office, looking at the documents, feeling a fury I hadn't felt in years, but also something else. Fear. If this got out of hand, I could lose everything I'd built. I decided to confront her. I knew where to find her, a fancy bar where her friends used to hang out, though now she went alone. When I walked in, there she was, sitting in a corner with a glass of wine and a bitter expression. She saw me, and her face changed like she'd won something. "Diego, what a surprise," she said with that fake sweetness I knew too well. "Don't play with me, Juliana," I said, sitting across from her. "I know what you're doing. The rumors, the lies about my company. Stop it." She raised an eyebrow, feigning surprise. "Rumors? I don't know what you're talking about." But her smile gave her away. I leaned in, lowering my voice. "If you don't stop, I'll make sure everyone knows who's behind it, and you'll have nowhere to hide." For a second, I saw fear in her eyes, but then she laughed like it was a joke. "Diego, you don't scare me," she said. "I can do much more than rumors. Think about that before you threaten me." I stood, knowing I wouldn't get anywhere, but as I left, I knew things would get worse. And they did. The rumors intensified. An important client canceled contract, and the stocks of one of my companies dipped slightly. It wasn't the end of the world, but it hurt. I put my team to work on damage control, issuing statements and meeting with partners to calm them. But the stress was wearing me down. I wasn't sleeping well, and every day I wondered what would come next. Then Juliana hit her lowest blow. One night, I got a message from an unknown number with a link. It was a cheap website filled with photos of me from my waiter days, taken from who knows where. There was text accusing me of being a fraud, of lying about my past to climb the ladder. It was ridiculous, but believable enough to do damage. My partner started receiving it, and even Sarah called me, worried. "Diego, this is Juliana's doing," she said. "You have to do something." I was done. I hired a private investigator to track the website. In 2 days, I had proof. The site was registered to one of Juliana's friends, but the payments came from her account. With that in hand, I went to the police and filed a defamation complaint. I didn't want to go that far, but she left me no choice. I also talked to Carlos, her husband. He was broken. He told me Juliana was barely home, spending money they didn't have, that their marriage was dead. "I don't know who she is anymore," he said. I gave him the evidence and asked him to talk to her. I don't know if he did, but the rumors stopped a few days later. I thought that would be the end, but Juliana had one last card to play. One morning, she showed up at my office, but this time she wasn't alone. She brought a guy she introduced as her lawyer, a disheveled man in a cheap suit, and I knew right away it was a bluff. "Diego, I'm giving you a chance," Juliana said, her voice cold. "Drop the complaint, or we'll sue you for harassment." I laughed in her face. "Harassment? You're the one who won't leave me alone," I said. The lawyer tried to speak, but I cut him off. "Take your threats somewhere else. I'm not scared." Juliana stayed silent, but her eyes were burning. They left, and that was the last time I saw her in person. But it wasn't the last disaster. A week later, someone set fire to one of my warehouses. No one was hurt, but the damages were thousands of dollars. The police couldn't prove it was Juliana, but I knew it was her or someone she hired. It was a hard hit. My insurance covered part of it, but I lost contracts and time. For the first time in years, I felt my world shaking. It wasn't just the money. It was a realization that despite everything I'd achieved, someone could still hurt me so much. I took a few days to think. I talked to Sarah, who was furious about what happened. "Don't let her win, Diego," she said. "You're stronger than her." Her words gave me strength, but I couldn't ignore the exhaustion. I decided I couldn't keep reacting. I had to act. I hired a legal team to strengthen the complaint against Juliana and added more security to my properties. I also started talking publicly about my past as a waiter, taking away the power of her lies. In an interview with a local outlet, I told my story, from waiter to entrepreneur through hard work. The response was incredible. Clients wrote to me. Partners congratulated me. What Juliana tried to use against me became my strength. Meanwhile, Juliana fell apart. Carlos left her, fed up with her madness. Her friends, who couldn't stand her anymore, vanished. I heard from Sarah that Juliana tried to ask her for help, but Sarah shut her down. "I told her to figure out her own life," Sarah told me. Juliana was left alone. No marriage, no status, nothing. Part of me felt it was justice, but another part just wanted to forget. The fire left a scar, not just because of the money, but because of the certainty that the past can always come back to bite you. I rebuilt the warehouse, recovered some contracts, but something in me changed. I became more cautious, less trusting. My friendship with Sarah stayed strong, and she was my rock in those days. But there was never anything more between us. She had her life with Martine, and I knew my place was as her friend. Sometimes I wondered if I'd ever find someone to fill that space, but for now, I was okay. Juliana never contacted me again. I heard she moved to another city, probably fleeing her own shame. I didn't feel joy or sadness, just relief. My life went on with its ups and downs. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And that, after everything, was enough.